because through that week I experienced a couple days of feeling very depressed, feeling extremely emotional, feeling so angry at myself by how I suddenly had these frustrated feelings towards my toddler, which I'd never experienced before, just not feeling at all like myself, like not even being able to recognize the way I'd respond to certain things. And so that was a huge reason why I was like, okay, we've got to get this baby sleep trained because this is not good for me, and in turn it's not good for my babies. Okay, I'm super excited about today's video. I'm going to be talking about sleep training, and I'm really going to be sharing 3 different kind of sleep training pillars, I would say, that I wish I had understood better when I slept trained our first daughter, because although she was completely sleep trained by 11 weeks old, the process getting there was extremely painful and just not a fun experience at all for either one of us. So these are things that I wish I would have known that I think would have alleviated a ton of the stress with trying to sleep train our first daughter, as well as I think it would have probably made the process actually a lot quicker. So I'm really excited to dive in because currently we have a 2-month-old who was completely sleep trained by 5.5 weeks. And the wonderful thing was that we never had to use the cry it out method once, which was so wonderful. So I feel like when you say the word sleep train, you kind of get one of 2 responses. The first is super positive. It's like, oh, I love sleep training my babies. I've done it with every single one. It's saved my marriage. It's helped me so much with postpartum depression, like all of these things. But then the second response, which I feel like is way more common, is super negative. And it's like, we tried it. It was a horrible experience. The baby cried for like 2 months straight. It was traumatizing to both of us. I would never do it again. And I really think a huge reason why sleep training can have this really negative reaction is because I think I've always associated sleep training with the cry it out method, which I really don't like. And so I'm here to make this video because with my second daughter, Cassie, she was completely sleep trained by 5.5 weeks, and we never once had to do the cry it out method. And I'm so thankful. And it just has really opened my eyes to the fact that I really don't think the cry it out method is always necessary when training, especially a newborn, to sleep through the night. So I'm really excited to jump in and share these 3 different pillars. I'm sure there's probably more, but these are the main things that have really helped with getting Cassie to sleep through the night super quickly without her ever screaming and crying for like 2 hours straight. Also, I wanted to mention all of these things come either from the Babywise book, which is a super great book. I've never sat down and read the entire thing. I've just read bits and pieces with my husband, and it definitely gave me enough input that I was able to sleep train our daughter very easily. The other thing is 2 videos that I'll link down below from a YouTuber that I really love, and I think between those things and this video, hopefully it will answer any of your questions. I also want to say that I realize all babies are so different, and I found it extremely frustrating when women with, I'm sure, really good intentions would just tell me, like, if you just do this one thing, your baby would sleep through the night, or if you just did this one thing, your baby would be perfect, or your baby would stop crying, or whatever it was, because all babies are so different. And so I hope this video does not come across that way. I know some moms actually enjoy getting up and nursing their babies in the middle of the night. My mom, for an example, didn't mind getting up and nursing us kids once a night because she found it kind of a bonding experience. And so I know everyone has different feelings. For myself though, I know I'm definitely a far better mom. I'm definitely a far better wife if I'm getting good sleep at night. So that's a huge reason why I want to sleep train. A couple of things as far as benefits to sleep training, you kind of are able to really quickly develop a routine, which is really nice. You can more easily kind of read your baby's cues, because I know if I fed my baby an hour ago, she's fussing and it's probably not hunger related, it's probably something else. I really like the fact that you get these 3-hour sections of kind of free time throughout your day where you know the baby's not going to be nursed, the baby should be content and happy for the most part. Another thing that I really like, obviously, is just the fact that you get really good sleep. I think that's definitely my favorite thing about it. And I feel like it's developing really good habits with your baby from a super young age. I don't know how it is trying to train like a 2-year-old to sleep through the night because I've never had to deal with that. but I just feel like it would be harder. Maybe it's not, but I just feel like you've developed that habit so long that maybe it would be more difficult. Maybe it's not, I don't know. My mom did it with us, so I'm not quite sure how that transition went. But all that being said, let's jump into the 3 pillars that I think are super important with getting your baby to sleep through the night. So to start out, when Cassie was 1 or 2 days old, it's kind of just survival mode of getting by and trying to figure out how to even deal with having another child. And your milk is coming in, you have a lot of colostrum, so I basically fed on demand the first couple of days. However, even during this time, even during the first week or two, although I'm getting up like every hour during the night and just feeling exhausted, so tired, I was trying to establish some good feeding habits. So I try to nurse every 3 hours. And this is super important with getting your baby in the habit of nursing until they're completely full, which I think is the biggest key to getting your babies to sleep through the night. And so I think it sounds kind of intense at first to be like every 3 hours. That's so strict, which I hate strict stuff. But I think it actually makes me be able to be more flexible because I kind of know what to anticipate throughout my day. So starting out, that's kind of the main thing I focused on, was trying to get Cassie to nurse about every 2.5 to 3 hours. Sometimes if she was really hungry, I was not super strict about it. I would feed her. If we know that we're going to be going, into town in an hour, I would nurse her an hour early. It wasn't a big deal. Just in general, it's a rhythm I try to get into right away after I've had both of the babies, and it's worked really well. A huge thing that's super important is to make sure though that your baby is getting fully fed when you are feeding them, so they can last those 2.5 to 3 hours and not be very hungry. Now I can go 3 to 4 hours and Cassie's completely content during that time. So that's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is to have this rhythm: feeding, wake time, sleep time. So as soon as Cassie wakes up in the morning, this rhythm is what starts. So I feed her, then she has her wake time, especially now that she's older. As a newborn, she just immediately goes back to sleep, and that's completely okay. But I really try to keep that rhythm going, and that's actually what my mom did. She didn't read any Baby-Wise books, she didn't do any of that, but with her last 3 kids, she slept trained us all just by doing this rhythm consistently of as soon as they wake up, you feed them, then it's wake time, then it's sleep time again. And for some reason, that exact rhythm really affects your baby being able to sleep through the night and also be a really good feeder. So that was the second thing that I really started to implement within the first couple of days after having Cassie. And at that stage, they're so little, it's really so easy because they're sleeping so much anyway. So during the first couple of weeks, I really try to focus on this, but I'm not very concerned about them sleeping through the night. And I want to wait until they get up to their birth weight before I really start trying to get them to sleep completely through the night, because I want them to gain that weight. So the first week in particular was me waking up pretty much every hour and probably having to nurse Cassie for like half an hour of that hour. And it was so exhausting. I instantly was reminded why I want to do sleep training, because through that week I experienced a couple days of feeling very depressed, feeling extremely emotional, feeling so angry at myself by how I suddenly had these frustrated feelings towards my toddler, which I'd never experienced before. Just not feeling at all like myself, like not even being able to recognize the way I'd respond to certain things. And so that was a huge reason why I was like, okay, we've got to get this baby sleep trained, because this is not good for me, and in turn it's not good for my babies. So the biggest thing though that I think is so important, that does tie in with the first 2, is to be sure at night when you're putting your baby to sleep that they are 100% full. And this was where I went wrong with Carrie, and I'm almost positive if I had done things differently and I'd done things with Carrie like I have done with Cassie, she would have slept much sooner through the night and we wouldn't have had to do the cry it out method at all. So what I do, and especially when babies are newborns, they are so tired, and so I would nurse Carrie. She would fall asleep and I'd put her in her bed. Everything would be good for about 5 minutes and she'd start screaming and crying again. And it was like, what on earth is wrong with you? So before, I kind of just thought, this must be where the cry it out method comes in. So I would let her cry, and it was just this ongoing nightmare for the first few weeks. So with Cassie, after like a night or 2, I remembered this is what I had to change with Carrie, and I finally was able to get her sleep trained. So with Cassie, immediately she falls asleep when I'm nursing her. Rather than putting her in her bed, the next thing I immediately do after she's fallen asleep and is not sucking anymore is I change her into her pajamas and I change her diaper. And this like instantly kind of wakes her back up enough and she nurses more. Well, sometimes even as a newborn, this isn't enough. And so I would take a cool wet washcloth and actually scrub out the wrinkles of her neck because she gets so much gross like old milk and stuff in there. Scrub that out. Well, that immediately wakes her up again. So I'd nurse her again. If she still falls asleep, I'll open up the window, let cold air blow on her, or put a cool rag on their feet, or something like that where they're just the slightest bit uncomfortable so they can't quite fall asleep. And this sounds so exhausting. For the first couple of nights I started doing this, which was probably during maybe the second week after she was born, it was probably honestly a 2-hour process every night of trying to get her to get enough milk she'd actually go to sleep and sleep through the night. But it sounds hard, but it's so much better than having to wake up every hour during the night and feed them because they're fussy, and then you fall asleep with them in your bed, and then you try to put them out of your bed and they wake back up. It's just kind of a nightmare. So it's so worth it. So this only really went on for the first couple of weeks. Now with Cassie, she stays awake long enough. She nurses pretty much the full time. Maybe I have to wake her up once. And then she goes to sleep and she sleeps through the entire night. She doesn't wake up one single time. It's such a blessing. So this was kind of how it looked with Cassie with training her. I think the most important thing is to make sure that they are getting that full feeding before bedtime. So with Cassie at first, the first couple of weeks, I would nurse her around midnight and she would last until about 3, and then I'd wake up again and nurse her again. Well, completely by herself, as I started really making sure to keep her awake until she's completely filled and fed, she pretty much started to last longer by herself. I never had to let her cry it out once. I never had to, let her self-soothe in her bed and go back to sleep. She's just always slept really long stretches after that, which has been such a blessing. So a couple of things on how to tell that your baby's full that I found really important. If their hands are loose, when they have their hands really tight and they're up by their face and they're just fussing, you know that they're hungry. I really look for Cassie to look very relaxed and calm and just kind of milk drunk when she's completely full. Another thing to look for is if they have green diapers, you know that they're not getting the hind milk, and the hind milk will actually keep your babies full longer. And so that's really important to make sure you're nursing completely on one side before you switch to the other, rather than kind of switching back and forth and your baby never getting that really high calorie milk that'll make them last longer through the night. Those are kind of the two most important things, but also when I lay Cassie down, I can tell if she's full because she'll be able to lay there even awake and not start fussing. Especially if I burped her and changed her diaper, so I know there's nothing going on where she should be fussing, trying to tell me something. So those are just a couple of things that I look for that have been so helpful, that has made it so she's sleeping through the night fantastic every single night. Honestly, she sleeps just as good as my 2.5-year-old at night. It's crazy. I feel so great. And it's just such a huge blessing. So I hope those things are helpful. I'll link those videos in that book down below so you can find them. Also, pardon me if there was any sound in the background. My 2-year-old and my newborn are just sleeping right behind me and looking at books. So see you next week, and be sure to leave any questions. If you have things that I didn't answer, leave them down below in the comment section and I'll try to get back to them. It usually does take me a couple of weeks, but I respond to basically all my comments but mean ones or ones that I can't understand what the question was or what someone was saying. So I will try and get back to you. All right, see you all. Bye.